Welcome to the Augusta Sports Report, hosted by Chad Cook. For more information on what we talked about today, visit augustasportsreport.com.
Okay, I'm Chad Cook. I'm here with extra special guest, Dip Mitras. This is called the Augusta Sports Report, but really it's an exit interview after what I think is the most successful season in Augusta University basketball history. We're just off the heels of it. It's Tuesday. We got back late Sunday night to a big crowd of supporters for Augusta University basketball, which was 24 hours after the team made it all the way to the national championship game and fell just short to a dynasty of sorts in Northwest Missouri State. We'll get right to it here. I'll start by saying, Dip, when I came in here today at Get Up Productions, the host of the Drop the Disc podcast and many other things, they've interviewed you before, and they've said many times that you coming on their show is a good luck charm. you talking to John Patrick Monday morning, right after you got back on the WGAC morning show, it was mentioned that talking to him is a good luck charm. In my opinion, that's very good evidence for the fact that you have such a winning program. Everybody you talk to thinks that they are a good luck charm because you win so much. Tell us your initial thoughts about what I call the greatest season you've had.
Yeah, I've never thought about it that way. I gave John a hard time the other day because we didn't talk the night before the national championship game or the morning before the national championship game. But no, we were very fortunate to have a great season, and we kind of capitalized a lot of things this year. Whatever date it was, I think January 22nd or January 15th, one of those 2 days. I think January 15th was the last time we lost a game. And you don't realize it until you play late in the year and you're like, wow, this winning streak's really going along. And we never really talked about the winning streak. We just talked about, okay, who's the next opponent? We were chasing a Peach Belt regular season title, which is always our first goal. And then we got that. We're like, well, let's go ahead and win this conference tournament. And when we got that, we're like, the next step is a regional tournament. So in a weird way, you don't really get ahead of yourself because you kind of take it, a cliche, one game at a time. I try to take it one practice at a time.
Yeah, and just to recap that season, some of the numbers, 33 wins, 4 losses. The team started out 10-0 in pre-conference play. I think reached as high as number 8 in the country. Over the next 7 games, you actually came in here at that 10-0 mark. Over the next 7 games, conference play started. You kind of had for this season, I guess the toughest stretch, won 4, lost 3, and then went on a 19-game winning streak. To your point, won the conference tournament, which was hosted in Augusta, and then won the Southeast Regional Tournament, which was also hosted in Augusta. And that stretch, that 6-game stretch where you hosted 2 tournaments, went 6-0, and won the second tournament, the NCAA Southeast Region Tournament, in dramatic fashion. That was a time when the crowd support, the community support really just built game by game, don't you think?
Yeah, it was like a snowball effect. It was kind of slowly grounding. I remember when we played in the regional tournament, we played Belmont Abbey, and we had a good crowd. And I'm thinking, Sunday's usually not a good crowd because you play Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday from hosting these things. And I looked out there on Sunday, I go, okay, we have the same crowd we had on Saturday, so that's a good sign. And then Tuesday when we went out there, I was like, whoa, okay, this is really nice. And I was happy for our players and to have the dramatic ending. It'll be one of those things. I was there at that game. A lot of people reached out to me and said they were there that I didn't see, but I didn't see everybody. So I think some people were making it up. But no, to get the fact that we're able to hit a shot in a game-winning fashion on our home court to advance to Elite Eight is, unprecedented.
And unprecedented is right, because I've heard you say, and tell us if this is true and how it felt from your eyes. You've never won a game that way, let alone a game that meant that much.
Yeah, and that magnitude. I had to go back to my Belmont Abbey days, and my wife informed me when a guy named Greg Levan from New York City made a corner 3 to beat Salem International at home, but that was probably in front of 50 people because I think it was at Christmas time. So, the magnitude of it, we have never won a game on a last-second shot with that magnitude. We've been involved with some games where it came down to the last possession, we were getting stops, and that's what ironically happened at Chico State game. We had to get a stop to put it in overtime, and that was the first first time that had happened all year. So, a couple firsts in a lot of those areas, and all based on the fact that we had a little turbulence there in beginning to start of the season. We lost 3 conference games all on the road, and for whatever reason, just weren't playing well on the road. One was before Christmas, and sometimes you can write that off as, well, that's the game before Christmas, And then we lost at Lander, and like, golly, we didn't defend, and then we just didn't play well. And even going back to some other games, we had won some road games, but didn't play well. And like I said, when we lost at Flagler, and Kirby was out because of a funeral situation, I said, man, okay, we're close. We can get this thing. And that was kind of the turning point.
So that game, you've mentioned that game many times, and it was either, like you said, January 15th or January 22nd. I know why you have those 2 dates, because I think Queens lost one of those other dates, and both of you didn't lose for 17 or 18 games till you met in that historic Southeast Region Championship game. What was it about that Flagler game? Or let me even suggest something. I know Kirby wasn't there. Your fantastic freshman, Jacquez Kirby, he had a funeral he had to attend, and so you had your starting 5 and your closing 5 at that time was a bunch of veterans.
Yes.
Do you think that team, because I looked at the stats this morning, David Vitti played for 22 minutes and Timmy Sellers played for 8 minutes. Those were the only 2 guys who came off the bench. So the 5 who started, a group that has been together for so long, do you think they kind of maybe set the tone, got the ball rolling towards what eventually became that run?
And they're, the returning guys are, I think, mature enough old enough to go, okay, this is the team that's supposed to win the league, and we just lost without a starter who's an important piece for us. And they're not making excuses because they felt like they could have won the game whoever played. And I saw it kind of like in their eyes, like, man, we're going to win this thing, okay? Now, you have to go out and do it. Then you have to go out and prove that you can win these games on the road. And we were able to do that. I think our first road win was at North Georgia. Who was kind of we were up and then grinded out a kind of a win. So, no conference wins are easy. But once we won that one, I'm like, okay, we can slowly get this thing going. When I can't remember, maybe in the national championship practice, I asked them, do you guys remember what our last road game was? Because I didn't. I had to look it up. All right,
Clayton State.
Yeah, at Clayton State, exactly.
And you were down by like 6
absolutely.
Late, and you needed that one to host the conference tournament.
Yes. So our 2 last road games of the year were at Aiken, and it was a very great battle, and then at Clayton State. And Clayton State was a team that did not make our conference tournament, and we were down, and we were able to come back and win. But it was funny. Our players knew right away, it was at Clayton State, which it was amazing. They remember it more than I do. But then we had all these stretch of home games, which kind of loses focus on that. But the point was, here's Clayton State, who didn't make our Peach Belt tournament, take us to the wire and possibly beat us. As you go into conference play, hey, man, like this can happen. And we played Georgia Southwestern. They go off to a great start in the first half. And, then we played it really well in the second half. But anything can happen. So I think that kind of reinforced it at the end of the year.
Yeah, how tough it was to get that Clayton State win on the road, which was important to host the conference tournament. And then you host the conference tournament, win it, which is important to host the regional tournament, which ended up being very important when it comes to pulling out that, again, historic win over Queens. It kind of leads into one of the things, kind of the first broad question I had for you. Being in Evansville with you for a week, being around you, Clint Bryant, your athletic director, former head coach, Lenny Carlson, who in one way or another has been connected to the program for over a half a century, and then all the other accomplished coaches and guys like Rex Walters on the radio call and Pete Gillen on the TV call. I heard over and over, people don't realize how hard it is to get here. You got the team there 14 years ago, all the way to the championship game like we did this year. And then you were fortunate enough to be able to go back 2 years in a row after that, and then a 12-year hiatus. To me, that kind of encapsulates it. But if we go back to the Clayton State, how hard it was to get that win, how hard it was to get the Pembroke win, the Queens win, or before that, the Columbus, the Flagler, the Georgia Southwestern, all those wins, any of those don't come true, and you might not, some of those you definitely don't get to the Elite Eight, but try to give us a sense for how difficult it is to get to Evansville, let alone to the final game, and then maybe one day even past that.
Yeah, well, it's Yeah, the way Division II basketball is you're in 8 regions. So in the 8 regions, you play out your whole year to host a regional tournament, and there's 8 different people hosting it. That's your first goal, okay? Well, actually, your first goal should be win your regular season title. But when you get to the postseason play, there's 8 teams, and often you play the same teams again, okay? Now, ironically, this year we didn't. When Belmont Abbey upset Pembroke in the first round, that kind of gave them the ace seed for the tournament. So I'm like, okay, at least we're playing somebody different. And then Pembroke plays Flagler. Pembroke beats Flagler. I'm like, okay, at least we're playing somebody different. Well, and then I knew Queens and Lincoln Memorial, we're definitely playing somebody different on the winner of the game. So you want to play different people. As coaches, that's our greatest frustration in our level. We kind of wish we could go to Florida and play those schools, or go up to West Virginia and play those schools, just so you play somebody different. But, it makes sense because of what happened in our last game. The NCAA wants Augusta hosting the last game against Queens, who's the number 2 seed, hosting, because it was an unbelievable atmosphere. And if I remember correctly, the 4 of the teams in the Elite 8 only were number 1 seeds. I know Chico was a 3 seed in their tournament. Northwest was a 3 seed in their tournament. Exactly. And won a national championship. So it's very hard to host a regional, and then you have the pressure of winning it. And it's a nice feeling, because the Elite 8 is our Final Four for Division II. You heard Bill Self talk about it the other day. To get to the Final Four is the goal, because all that's marketed in Division I basketball is the Final Four. Now, obviously, those 4 teams want to win it. But it's the same thing at our level. It's get to the Elite 8, get to the Elite 8. Well, then when you get to the Elite 8, you got to recalibrate and say, okay, let's try to win this thing. So it is very unique at our level. And like I've learned through the years, I've had teams, make it to the Elite 8 that shouldn't have made it. I've had teams not make it that probably should have made it. My very first experience as head coach was 22 years ago at Belmont Abbey. We went to play that, ironically, at IUP, and I remember going to the first game thinking, man, our seating got messed up. And I'm like, I didn't know anything about seeding. And then I watched the team. I'm like, I'm glad we're not playing that team in the first round. So, the older you get, I heard Mike Bray say this when he got in the NCAA tournament. You don't care about seeding, man. You just want to get the thing and you play whoever you're going to play. And, when you get the Elite 8, it doesn't matter. You're going to win 3 games, and you're going to have to beat 3 really good teams to do that.
I think another illustration of how hard it is, we've run into that Queens team 3 times now, got over the hump this 3rd time, or at least in recent memory. And, I think the last time when they beat us to get to the Elite 8 3 years ago, they got all the way to the Final Four, right? Yeah,
I think they might have lost the first game, or they might have won the first one. I can't remember. Okay. I know they didn't make it to the national championship game. I know that. Yeah, so it's hard.
And my point was, so 3 years ago, they make it to the Elite 8. There's nothing that would suggest that they wouldn't be back there regularly.
Oh, absolutely.
Just a great team. And if I'm not mistaken, they got beat in the first round of the tournament last year.
Yes, they sure did.
Had the COVID year.
The
tournament got canceled 2 years ago. Yep. Last year, they get beat in the first round. This year, they don't get past us. So they haven't been back since they got there over the Dean Williams-led team of ours.
Yes.
And there's nothing that would suggest that they wouldn't be back. They have great players.
Yep.
They have, a great program.
Yep.
And then you look at like a Northwest Missouri State, who's won 4 out of the last 5, the team that beat us in the national championship game Saturday. Well, what do they have to do to get to make that happen? Well, they have to have, Ryan Hawkins, a guy who's maybe the best player on Creighton's team, going to the second round of the NCAA tournament, getting barely knocked off by Kansas. They have to have him a National Player of the Year more than once. And then he leaves. Well, no problem. You have another 2-time National Player of the Year in Trevor Huggins, a guy, I read his stats earlier. He's never lost an NCAA tournament game.
Right.
He's scored over 2,800 points, and put on. I think, weren't you told? Didn't you hear his coach say? I think I heard that his coach said that was the best game he's ever played, which is saying a lot.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Well, I can tell you this, that elite talent is really hard to find. Okay. And, Trevor's an elite talent guy. Sometimes, and it's unusual that they had 2 of them. Very fortunate coach A.J. Bowman, elite talent. Ben Madgen, elite talent. Tyshaun, elite talent. Dean Williams, by the end of his career, elite talent. So with our level, you got to recycle guys. You got to just turn the wash. So there's another group of guys coming in. And I remember when we signed Kirb, I said, okay, we've got another guy that should be in our top 5 right away. And as a coach, you want to have 10 to start the year. You want to have a top 8 when you get into January, but you need to have good players. And, we kind of suffered an injury with Timmy Sellers I thought was going to catch up with us. And I'm not sure if Timmy would have made a big difference in the national championship game, but he was a guy that was providing phenomenal minutes for us. So we were able to survive that. So really, really hard to do. And you got to get elite talent. Then you got to get them on the same page, and you can follow Division I basketball. I'm a big fan of Purdue. And, they lost to St. Pete, and you could tell there was a little internal thing going on watching them play. So it's really hard to keep them all on the same page. The best thing is get really talented players and then try to get them on the same page and keep them on the same page.
And even sometimes if you do both of those things, you still don't make it to that Elite Eight. But let's talk about some of those incredibly talented players of ours. You mentioned Jacquez Kirby. We could go in any order, but since you mentioned his name, and he's the newest of the cast, freshman, first round of the NCAA tournament, scores 25 points. I think he had 11 rebounds in a blowout win over Belmont Abbey. 2 games later, I guess it was 3 or 4 nights later at Queens, I thought he played against Queens. I thought he played the best game of his seasons. He scored 20 points, had 7 rebounds, but just kept ball after ball alive. The 6'6" freshman from Jeff Davis High School in Hazelhurst, Georgia, is he? When it comes to when he first stepped on campus or throughout his first season as a freshman, is he the most talented,
no doubt,
highest potential guy you've ever had? Come in. I'm not saying where he'll end up, but like as a newcomer.
Yes, because he experienced some success in high school. He was a great player. He was 2A player of the year in the state of Georgia, so he had a lot of success in high school. Dean Williams was physically as talented as anybody, but Dean had played soccer until he kind of got to 16 years old, so he hadn't developed as a basketball player. But I remember the first time working with Kirby on the floor, I said, okay, he'll be the most talented player that we've ever had as a freshman. And then he got off to a great start. He had some issues just playing through contact, just hanging his head. But I just told him, I said, remember one time, just stay with me, man. You're going to be fine. Just stay with it. You want it to be easy, and he's a great kid, but like it ain't as easy as it looks. And he really developed. And I would argue that if you want to, he's the next one that could be considered All-American in our place eventually if he works at it and he gets better and keeps working on his weaknesses.
Early signs have to be encouraging. You mentioned, at the beginning of the season, there were some setbacks. Maybe everybody's going to have them, but you look at the way he shot the ball and the way he competed and the way he, the maximum effort mixed with that athleticism and that raw talent. The early signs have to be encouraging, right?
Well, as I think about it, as I'm trying to think, we didn't have Kirby that game, and I knew he was valuable. His teammates knew he was valuable.
The Flagler game. The last loss before the final game of the season.
But I think it was right about then we kind of made the decision to put him on the other team's best player.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think if that's actually true. I think it was, because I said, well, he struggles some night with some things. I go, let's just go put him on the other team's best player. So
he guarded Jacquez Kirby.
Yeah, he guarded Lottie. He guarded, in the Queens game. Kenny Dye. He guarded Smith in the Queens game. He guarded, he did not guard Levi in the Pembroke game because the only guy we wouldn't put him on is a true post player because that's who Tyshaun's going to guard. So he basically took that role and accepted that role. That's coming from a Division I transfer that's a high, acclimated guy from high school. But he was just trying to figure out how to get himself going sometimes. So I guess his focus could have been, hey, let me go out and shut this guy down. And that developed him as a player. I still joke about it. I really don't know sometimes when he's going to shoot it. Okay. I don't know when he's going to drive it. A friend of mine watched us play and said he hasn't seen a guy with quick bounce like that in a while. Yeah. Like he's got what I call bounce. He'll throw it up and go get it. Sometimes it's thrown it to himself. He's got a lot of talent in that skinny body of his. And I think ironically, it might have been right about then we said, well, let's just go put him on the other team's best player. And he accepted that challenge. Like he knew coming over, I would say, who you got? He said, I got 14, I got 12. We couldn't do it in the Northwest game because they were going to do so many ball screens, so he ended up having to guard the guy some. But no, he accepted a role that's not easy to do.
There was a time during the season when you might not close the game with him on the floor. I feel like that changed for good maybe in that Queens game.
Yeah, or close to it. There were nights where
some nights he was in foul trouble.
Yeah, he stayed in foul trouble because he's so active. He's got to learn to keep his hands back a little bit. He'll learn that as a player. There were nights that I remember telling my assistants, hey, we're going to have to close the game with Kirby. Let's keep him over here. Or I remember him making a comment to me. He was so happy I put him back in with 4 fouls. I think it might have been at Aiken. Well, I needed him, and Darren's a good player too. So it's usually between him and Darren or him and Troy. Troy's going to close it. So we had 6 guys that were going to close the game for the most part, and he was one of the 6. And we never had. I don't think we had to close the game without Tyshaun because he hadn't fouled out. So no, he as he gets better and learns kind of what we're doing. And this year we said just learn this position and don't worry about anything else. And then when we had Timmy go out, I had Vidi kind of learn the backup 5 spot and learn other things. So it was a challenge, but no, I'm very happy to coach him. Very.
Very, very. So you mentioned a couple different times there, Tyshaun. That's your 7'1" junior center, be a senior next year. From the during the winning streak, and then he played great, and he really caught some momentum, some incredible momentum during the week that I thought was the most important week at that point in the season, when you had to win at Aiken and win at home against Flagler to overcome. At times, Flagler had I think a 3-game advantage over us, and so he averaged 26 and 15, National Player of the Week, 2-time in a row Peach Belt Player of the Week, and then it just seemed like he got even better and better from there in the conference tournament and the regional tournament. Shot lights out from the free throw line. He was 7 for 7 in that Pembroke game, and I don't think one of them hit the rim. All swish. Top 10 in the country in free throws made. I want to say 3rd in the country in free throws made, and led the country in free throw attempts. Top 15 in the country in double doubles. You've talked about how much he's gotten in shape. His development. Could you have hope for any better when it comes to how much he's developed over the 3 years in Augusta?
Well, he's matured as a person first, and he's matured as a player. The free throws is your best example. I think he was 17 for 20 during the regional tournament free throw line. And I want to say in the Queens game, he had 5 assists. Okay, so you could be a point guard and not get 5 assists in the game. Ironically, right before I came down here, I was doing something for him. He averaged more rebounds his first year here than he did this year.
Okay.
And I'm trying to figure out why. Well, I think part of the reason why is because he never left the basket because he was so woefully out of shape, okay? Well, now he's out on the floor guarding ball screens. He's got to go out there. We had to really hide him. Now, I think
changing all the shots.
Everything. So, therefore, he averaged like 9.5 rebounds his first year or whatever, 8 point something this year. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. But I think part of it is because we utilize him in a different role. Like, we expected him to go out on the floor and guard a little bit more. And now his development's great. I told him the other day we were walking back from the practice. And I said, I saw a drill that I'm going to use with you to get you better. He goes, well, I'm sure it did. I'm sure it's going to involve some type of running. Okay. So he's willing to be coached right now. We'll get back in the gym. It's really hard to be 7 foot, 265 pounds and play college basketball. Play any sport, to be honest with you.
You've mentioned that a couple times, how everybody wants to say, well, all he needs to do is this, or he should do that. But you stress the difficulty, not the unfair advantage of being 7'1", the actual difficulty of playing basketball at 7'1". Tell us about that.
Well, it's just hard, because everybody's telling him what to do. And I remember in practice, I blew the whistle. Nobody tell him. I'll tell him what to do. Me, Lenny, and Zach, and even let me handle this, okay? Because it's hard. We know he's got to work on going over his shoulder, but he does it in practice. He doesn't have the confidence to do it in the game. So I know for a fact, like when we do our workouts starting here in a couple weeks, I will tell him you're not allowed to shoot with your left hand when we go scrimmage it. Now he'll get pissed off at me and I want to score, but he'll accept it because he knows he's got to work on it. Those are things. I think with post kids you can get too complicated. Jump hook, free throw. Jump hook, free throw. That's what you need to be successful. Everybody wants the pretty stuff. That pretty stuff, it ain't going to help you win games. So, and he's adapted to it, and, he's increased his range. Now, whether I'm going to let him go out there and shoot 15-footers, that's a whole other issue. We've got to get him better in certain areas, but he's willing to do it. He's kept his weight off, and he has a chance to be, a National Player of the Year candidate next year. He'll be preseason Player of the Year as long as he keeps developing and keeps his focus on what's important.
You talk about his development as a person. Before I ask the question, in the semifinal game, 25 points, 14 rebounds, goes 12 for 12 from the field. First time in Elite Eight history that a player had gone perfect from the field with that many attempts. Now he goes into the championship game. I'll say it, you don't have to, whatever. He gets the raw end of the whistle throughout. And you mentioned him going over his left shoulder towards his right hand. when we're down 59-56 after battling back 22-5 run to cut it to 1, get a tough whistle on Hudgens, gets 2 free throws. We go down 59-56. We get the ball into Tyshaun. He turns over his left shoulder, tries to finish with his right. He gets mugged, doesn't make it. And after the game, I asked him about dealing with the contact, dealing with the fact that the whistle didn't blow in his favor, and you specifically called out his answer as being mature and something that that you admired. So you talk about his development as a person. That was an example of that.
Well,
right?
no question. You know, I remember when people came to look at Garrett, NBA people look at Garrett, and the guys would tell me, he can't, at this level, he's running into people and they're calling fouls. And, you know, you don't want to tell him this, but eventually you just want to take an elbow and stick it in a guy's face, you know, and you don't want to do that because that's not the right thing to do, but it's frustrating. It can be frustrating. He gets a little emotional at times. I tell him, I got you. I'll get the technical. Let me get it. You don't want to pick up a foul. And he does get mugged. It's unfair. You know, I remember even with, you know, in developing Tyshaun, we'll show him clips of every shot he takes here in this, you know, in the postseason. And there's going to be plenty of times I'm going to say, you're going to have to learn to play through this stuff because it's not going to change. And, you know, he answered it very mature. You know, even in the IUP game when he caught the guy with the elbow, he apologized to the guy. Now, I would argue the guy was in the restricted arc and all that stuff, and the referees, we had a big discussion about it. But he's not malicious by any means. You almost want him to do something on occasion, but that's not the right thing to do. But no, he's matured us a lot. He's a better teammate. He likes the attention of being a good player. Some guys don't like the attention of being a good player. He thrives on that. You know, we'll have to have a talk with him about, okay, as this progresses, it's going to be more and more attention for you. There's going to be NBA scouts coming to practice next year. There's going to be people in his ear. And you know, the first thing he texted me after the game was, Coach, you believed in me when nobody else believed in me. I'm not going anywhere. And that's a credit to him because I did believe in him when nobody else did. Now, it took for his hard work to get to this point, and he still needs to work harder, and he knows that.
Well, that was going to be a question I asked. You kind of brought it up there. I think if I'd have asked you this a while back, I don't know what your answer would be, but I have a feeling I'm going to like the answer here. Can Tyshon be an NBA player one day?
The NBA has changed so much because of the proliferation of three-point shooting. You know, so there's not many guys like him in the Shaq era of basketball. But like Rex Walter said, there's a lot of 7-foot guys on rosters that aren't as good as him. Now, that doesn't mean you can make an NBA roster. You know, one of my best friends works for the Pelicans. He's like, wow, he's really gotten good. Like, he watches it from a friend of mine perspective. And the same thing during the Elite Eight tournament, the guy told me, he said, I picked up the phone and called the Minnesota Timberwolves to have a scout come see him. So whether he could do that, the game has changed so much. You got Draymond Green playing the 5. You know, Joel Embiid is great. Okay, he's great, but there are not a lot of people out there like him. So I don't know. It's going to take. You know, he still has to develop, and you know, he's still got one more year. He's got 18 more months. To be honest with you.
Well, the fact that if somebody's giving him a look, you know, most players don't get that privilege.
Never.
And I think. You know, Ed Pinckney was at the tournament, and I think he represents the Rockets. So good for him for, you know, just having that that be spoken about. And you know, so we've talked about Jacquez and Tyshaun, and you know that they have. It's one thing to have either Jacquez's athletic ability, raw talent, and Tyshaun's height, but you've talked about both of them, whether it be Jacquez accepting the challenge of guarding the best player and improving as the year goes on, and Tyshaun's development over 3 years. Do you think, what role does a player like Tyree Myers, Miguel Arnold, Troy Cracknell, Darren Lucas White, those guys, if I'm not, okay, those are all guys who have been here for 4 years, Troy 5. The leadership, the maturity, the competitiveness, the effort, the consistency of those guys, that foursome, first of all, is in so many ways the heart and soul of your program. Absolutely. And it has to have an incredible influence on the two guys we just talked about.
Yeah, they do. You know, they saw Tyshon before he was good. Okay, they saw Kirby struggle a little bit, and they were good teammates to him. You know, early in the year, some of those guys would question sometimes. Okay, a guy doing it because they knew what it took to get to the national tournament, not the Elite Eight, but they knew what it took to get to the NCAA tournament play. But no, they're an important piece to it. You know, they're all different personalities. You know, Tyree is actually the leader. Darren doesn't say much, but they're going to listen. Troy, actions he's in the gym dictating exactly. You're never going to question his work ethic and Miguel's personality. They're not going to question him. There were times last year when Miguel and Troy sat there and watched us get whooped and people talking smack to a bench. You're like, why are these guys running their mouth to us? I think people forget quickly how good of the players they were, and or are. So, no, they were an integral part of it. And, with the exception of Troy. Troy's finishing up his master's. He'll be leaving. But all those other guys are coming back. I'll have to approach it a little differently because if you think about it, 6 of the 7 guys that played in the last game a year are going to be back, and Timmy Sellers is over there with an injury that would have been played in that game. So we'll have hopefully 7 guys back if everything goes the way we planned, and then other guys got to get it better, and then we deal with the other stuff in recruiting.
So trying to take some of those guys individually. Tyree Myers, in the last game of the season, surpassed D'Angelo Boyce, a player from about 7, 8, 9 years ago. Passed D'Angelo, DA, as the all-time assist leader in school history. Tyree's the unquestioned leader. He started as a freshman at the point guard position. And, you were mentioning earlier about Tyshaun averaging more rebounds as a freshman than he did this year. Tyree, I was looking at it, and he scored more points as a freshman than he did any other year until this year. He ended up with 336 points, whereas his freshman year he scored 322. Played a few more games this year.
Yep, absolutely.
And so in many ways, his highest scoring output was as a freshman. There's no, we don't talk a lot about it on air, but the way he has dealt with injuries and continued to be the kind of player he is, you just can't. That has to be the way he's done. That has to be unique in all your years in coaching.
Yeah, no, he for example, he got his knee drained right before we went to Elite Eight. We hadn't drained it this year. Before, when I had a guy named Steve Smith, we would drain it all the time. So it was swelling up on him. And you have certain maintenance with him. You're playing a bunch of games in a certain number of days. Now, he's the leader of our team. You never question his work ethic. He'll take this week off. I'm sure he'll take next week off, and he's going to be back in the gym. We got to figure out how we're going to get him in graduate school for the whole school of business and get him rolling with that part. And it won't affect the way he approaches the game the right way. When we first got here, he was one of those guys who spent a lot of time in the gym, but he kind of wasted some time. And he learned with Drew Gibson, my assistant at the time, just like, hey, just be efficient in your time. And Tyree doesn't waste a lot of time. He's in there for 40 minutes. He's out. He only works on shots he's going to work on. He's not doing things that he's not going to do. A lot of guys will go out there and do things they're not going to do. He works on the things that happen during the game and just tries to keep his body healthy. And, his parents were able to make the trip up there. They're very appreciative. As a high school coach, one of the first texts I got, they're appreciative because, to be honest with you, nobody gave him a chance. We were the only one who really kind of, when it got down to it, give him a scholarship his senior year. And, he's been, he had told me before the year, Coach, I'm going to make my decision at the end of the year whether I'm coming back. I said, you're my guy. You do whatever you want. I got it. You've busted your butt. You're getting an accounting degree. You're doing everything you're supposed to do. And I could tell toward the end, I'm like, okay, he's not leaving this, And then after the game, whatever the term is, run it back. I don't know what that means, but my daughter informed me that means he's coming back. So, he reached out to me, and I talked to him yesterday. And, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to approach this. And him and Darren are easy to coach. Darren's completely different type of personality, but those two are, thick as what. I mean, they're tight now. I mean, nothing goes on without their lives. One of them doesn't know. I can tell you that.
In many ways, Darren and Tyree, I mean, you've always had a winning program, but I feel like they really re-energized things when they stepped on campus.
Absolutely. Just, Darren won a state championship his senior year of high school as a post player, basically. I remember when I went to see him, I went to go visit another kid at Coach Bryant's old high school at Bishop McNamara, a kid we recruited. And I said, let me zip over to the state tournament because I'd heard about Darren. And I went up into the, whatever they call Maryland's place. I was looking for Cole Fieldhouse, whatever they call the arena. And I kind of took an elevator and sat on the top of the arena. And I looked down there and I said, man, this kid's pretty good, And I'm like, he's like an inside player. He's single A high school, small high school. And then, we started recruiting him. I hadn't talked to him until I watched him state tournament. And then in that period of time, he visited, and his mom's wonderful, a great person, just like Darren. And when he came down here, he's a low maintenance guy. I joke about this all the time with him. We're coming, where you want to eat? He's, I'll eat at Popeyes. I'm like, all right, I like guys that eat at Popeyes. He's just a simple guy. He just wanted to get something to eat. All he cared about was seeing the academic part and seeing the guys on the team and playing basketball. And the first play he made out there, Drew turned to me and goes, we ain't got a guy with that quickness, I can tell you that. So ironically, Drew went to look at another guy for me this year in the D.C. area, and he texted me, he goes, he ain't Darren or Tyree. Well, that's what I want. I want Darren or Tyree. So, no, I enjoy coaching Darren as well. He's a winner and just a phenomenal kid. His mom reached out there doing something for him in his county, honoring him, so all kinds of great stuff for him.
I love it. A couple of great things from the week, Darren with his the story about him and his biggest fan, and then the video with the mothers who were wishing their sons good luck, and Darren's mother and that whole quartet was particularly enjoyable to watch. And before we leave Darren and Tyree, you kind of mentioned it there. Tyree being a accounting major, has an internship at a local accounting firm. He's going to be a graduate student next year. Just the whole the storybook type student athlete guy.
Absolutely.
Can't have a better man leading our team. But when it comes to Darren, one of the things in that story about him and his biggest fan, it talked about him being a great defender, and he is. And he said he really got serious about defense when he came on the visit to Augusta, because he said Miguel lit him up.
Yeah.
And so Miguel Arnold, let's talk about him. Hit the biggest shot in, I guess, program history. No, I know is my favorite shot of all time. To lead to put the team on. Make the team Southeast Region champions over Queens in that championship game, and then goes to Evansville and drops 33 on 13 of 17 shooting, 7 of 10 from deep. Just went. I said he detonated in overtime there. Can Miguel, whether or not he is a 20-point scorer, doesn't matter. He's going to play winning basketball. But is he the kind of guy that in this last year you think will just build on his scoring?
No question.
Putting it on the floor, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no question. He recruited him as a point guard, and just couldn't play the point the way I wanted it played. And found out he was a better two guard, to be honest with you.
He played point in that South Carolina game at the beginning of the game, and probably never played it again as far as starting the game and stuff like that. No,
because he rolled his ankle, and so he didn't play the first weekend up in North Carolina. So Miguel's next challenge will be this, and it's not hard. He needs to become like a killer in transition. In other words, when he gets it in transition, he plays the right way. He's got to get to the point where, and I tell him all the time, I said, go buy him. Go. But he doesn't want to make a mistake. So he really is a conservative player. He's an old school player in that sense. He doesn't like it when people go buy somebody and turn the ball over. But he's going to get to the point where he's going to have that freedom where just go. Just go be the guy, and that's the next step in developing his game. His stats, whatever stats he's made, he's way blown out the 3-point thing. But his percentages are just, for his career, ridiculous, And you don't want to mess with that because, one of the reasons he takes good shots is we kind of make him take good shots. I give him a little freedom, but he's not taking some of the shots that other people are allowed to take. His game dictates that a little bit, but he's got to get better in certain areas. He's got to be a better defender, and he's the personality of the whole team. He had a situation where he got hurt, and I can't remember what.
Shoulder.
He hurt his shoulder, and he's not going to sit out. I'm like, well, if you're dressed, you got to play. And then we had a little tit for tat at halftime one time. Are you playing or not? What are you doing over here? So I told him, I said, if you're the personality of the whole team, all right? So if you're over there sulking, these other guys are going to sulk. But that's the only time during his career it's been an issue. And he was coming off an injury, and it's hard as a shooter, too, to have a shoulder injury. So now we look forward to his development. He's got a bunch of points in his career, and he's an all-league player. There's no question about that.
Second in the nation in 3-point field goal percentage. I think it's 48%. I think he actually, as a freshman, shot slightly even better than that. To your point about career shooting percentage is off the charts. And you say his next step is to be a killer in transition. The shot that he made to cap off the 22-5 run to get us within one, that was a play in transition. And that's kind of, I won't say design, but I think Tyree gave him the ball. No, it is specifically that play.
Yeah, it is. It's good players
that
playing.
Trailing screen or whatever that's called.
So his next step is to come down and transition, eyeball the rim, and just go by people. And he did it now. He did it against Chico. He did it in a regional tournament. He's done it before. He also knows, he's the first one that says Tyshaun should get the ball. He doesn't. I want to say, he doesn't crave to shoot a bunch. Like he's a team player. He's a team. All our guys are team guys, but they know in order for Tyshaun to be good, they have to throw him the ball. He can't bring the ball up the court. So Miguel's next step is for us as coaches to put him in situations where you go, okay, you go get this thing off your handle, which that'll motivate him, and he'll get better. I mean, he's a gym guy now. He hasn't been in there yet. Hopefully, he's dealing with some academic stuff, but he'll be in there. I'll reach out to him today because somebody wanted something from him during Masters Week. I'm not sure where he's going. He probably is going to stick around here. So no, his personality's great, and he's got a bunch of points, and he's shattered records, and we look forward to coaching him again.
So you say he's a gym guy. You mentioned Tyree. Taking a cue from your former assistant coach, Drew Gibson, on how to be a gym guy productively. Are those your two biggest gym rats, or is everybody a gym rat?
Well, Troy was too, so coming back, those two definitely. I remember I reached out to Tyshaun about Miguel because Miguel was overdoing it. I said, Miguel, you're a shooter, you got to have your legs. He was spending too much time in the gym. So Tyshaun texted me right back. Here was my routine. I showed him. I said, "You're not Keyshawn. I'm not comparing you, but here's what his routine was. One involved stretching afterwards. He didn't want to stretch afterwards. I said, this is why you keep your body. And is it big about just get your reps in your spots? And Miguel was better at that. And I think that's why he was fresh at the end of the year a little bit. But as he approaches the postseason, he's gonna dedicate himself to getting in better shape and working on the things. And I think sometimes as a coach, you have to tell him, hey, we need you to do this. And if I tell him he needs to do it, he'll do it. No question about that. He's as coachable as they come.
So we've been talking about Miguel. We'll end it with Troy Cracknell, your graduate student, senior, the only player who won't be back next year, out of this group that we're talking about right now. Troy, like Miguel, had to sit out the entire season last year. They both played, technically Miguel played 2 games and Troy played once, but that's essentially a season off, COVID complications. We all had them. They dealt with them more than others. It's not easy to take a year off and then go play a championship level basketball for a season.
Yeah, and he broke his foot during this time too. So he also broke his foot during the COVID thing. So he broke his foot and then came back, played a game, then caught COVID. So he was out. He had told me before the year started he wanted a red shirt based on the COVID thing. And I'm like, well, hindsight, that was the right thing to do. Now, he had a great senior year. It's funny, I think he averaged the exact same points he averaged his, I guess you consider his junior year, the year we were going to Lake Memorial for the tournament. But he matured as a rebounder. He did a phenomenal job on a kid at IUP. Nobody gives enough credit because that kid was
number 3, the All-American.
Yes. Or no, the shooting guard that scored points.
The guy that went off in the first game over there.
And Troy was there on every catch, did a great job defensively, always took pride defensively, had nights where he rebounded the ball. As we transition, I tell David Vitti every day, you're better than Troy was when he came here. You're better than Troy was his sophomore year. And he kind of looks at me, I go, I know their development, and Troy spent a lot of time in the gym, and Vitti spends a good amount of time in the gym, but Troy really spent time to commit on his weaknesses. So as we transition, we lose Troy, and hopefully Vitti can get into that role. He has some good moments. He has nights where he struggles. A lot of his is just not putting too much pressure on himself. And, I shared an article with him, Miguel, and Vitti, Miguel, and Troy about Steph Curry. And basically the gist was, if you're going to be a good golfer, you got to go out and hit golf balls. But if you're going to be a good shooter, you got to spend time in the gym, and you don't have to spend 2 hours. You got to work on your shot. And Vitti's issue right now is just the ability to go to the next play, miss a shot, and go shoot the next one. Troy and Miguel were never hesitating if they missed one, and hopefully Vitti will get that role next year.
Troy Cracknell, an elite shooter, to go with another elite shooter in Miguel Arnold. So to have 2 of those guys on the court with Tyshaun Crawford, a dominant center, is extremely valuable. It helps Tyshaun. It helps them. The complementary nature of all that is self-evident. When you lose Troy, that was going to be, you kind of referred to it there. David Vitti's a good shooter. Jacquez Kirby was even a good shooter this year. We could disagree or whatever, but what those guys don't do, what David and Jacquez and even Tyree, like if Tyree were to play off the ball, all good shooters, but what they don't currently do on a regular basis is what Troy and Miguel do, when the footwork, you run off the screens and you're going left or you're going right, and those are much tougher shots to make. Tyshaun used to do it, and I would argue that since Tyshaun, only Miguel and Troy have been able to do it on a regular basis. Do those guys, whether it be Jacquez, David, and maybe even Tyree, do they need to add that, or is it like in the case of Jacquez? No, what you need to add is back to the basket.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be different for each one. Tyree demonstrated during COVID year because we had him a score. So I'm not worried about Tyree. Mm-hmm. His game is a little different than those guys. Viti's got the footwork to do it. He just got to spend a little more time on it. Kirby's got footwork issues right now. It's hard. He shot one off of a screen. I'm like, whoa, okay. It was really the first one he shot.
Did he make it?
No, he missed it. Okay. But I remember telling him, this is the one you've got to learn to make if you're going to take the next step. And, Troy, when he first came here, pivoted off the wrong foot, to be honest with you. And we corrected it. He spent time doing it. Miguel kind of had that characteristic, but Miguel can kind of come off screens both ways. So, no, it's part of it when we're not a ball-dominant guy standing there and dribble with the ball too much, so we're moving the ball, we're passing it, we're coming off cuts and screens. And with Tyshaun, you got to be able to make a shot, So with him out there, you got to have guys who can make shots around him. And their percentages were helped because of the amount of attention he had. So, no, it's about time, spend time to work at it. You got, if you think about it, you got 6-7 months before the season starts, before, I say October is when you can develop as a player between now and the first practice. When we get to practice, it's about our team success. And, guys have time, and they'll, we'll meet with them this week and say, okay, here's what we need to work on. And they'll tell me what they think they need to work on, and we'll together figure this thing out.
You've talked a lot about practice starting in 2 weeks, for people that, like my old understanding of how college basketball works, from the 90s and stuff like that, that's different. What do you mean by practice starts in 2 weeks? Individuals, group, how's it work?
Well,
now?
I'm just looking at this, we're allowed 4 hours on the court with them. And then I think 4 hours with weights, or weights or conditioning.
Per week?
Per week. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So 8 a week.
Okay.
So it used to be you only could do 4 hours of individual work with 3 guys. So they changed that rule a few years ago so you could have everybody in there. We have such a small window. We only got like maybe 8 workouts, 9 workouts because we played so late in the year and Masters, being off. So we will probably do team workouts within those, and then within those we'll have hopefully 10 guys out there, and we'll work on things that they need to work on, and they don't even realize we're doing it. So we won't do Tyshaun just shooting jump hooks. We'll have everybody out there because in the summer they're all going home anyway. So I think I've kind of made a decision that for everybody, to be honest with you, so I can challenge Miguel and say, hey, this is where I need to be better. This is what we talked about in individual meeting. Tyshaun, this is you going over your other shoulder. Curve, this is you playing through contact. So rather than I always say anybody can shoot around a cone, okay? Can you shoot around a defender in your hand in the face? And while you have everybody here, let's go ahead and utilize that because it helps tremendously. Now, you sacrifice some things, but what I've learned is you structure team workouts. If guys aren't getting enough shots, like Tyree Miguel go, I got to get some more shots in the morning, or Troy, I got to get more shots, or Tyshon, I got to get some more free throws. So they learn if that's what I need to take. I can't take a postseason and worry just about Kirby or Tyshaun. I got to worry about the whole team we've got. So it'll be interesting. I haven't done it this way, but I'm definitely going to do it for the next 2 weeks this way.
Nate, yeah, I could tell that the practice starts in 2 weeks. I haven't quite heard that one before. So.
Yeah, there was a couple of rolled eyes over there because the guys were like, what are we doing? So, but it's not going to be miserable. I kind of have an idea what I want to do, and I don't want to say they'll enjoy it, but, I watched our girls yesterday. It's amazing when you take a couple weeks off, your conditioning goes, so 2 weeks off. Now, if you're in decent shape, which most of our guys were, it won't take them long to get back in shape, but I'm not going to kill them. I want them to work on things that they'll see what we're working on. And, we'll have a couple of recruits in during that time as well.
Last question. Any chance, speaking of how things are different now than they used to be, there's this whole summer trip thing. Any chance you might be doing something?
I got to look at that. I got to look at the rules on whether incoming kids can do it. I got to figure out if anybody's got summer school issues. So that'll be based a little bit on that. Yeah, I've looked at a couple different things. Sometimes you need time away, okay. So one of my first phone calls, believe it or not, in the next week after the Final Four is going to be the assistant at Richmond, who I've known for a few years. Don't know him real well, but know him as a professional. He had, as assistant, they had everybody back on a team. Yeah. And they were supposed to pick to win their league, and they didn't. And then they kind of caught fire and made the NCAA tournament, win a game. So I'm going to reach out to him and say, how is it coaching these returning guys, because I've got, a lot of guys, they're going to go, okay, here's Dip today. This is going to be one of these days. He's going to be honest. They know it's coming. I got to, I changed my approach this year, but I got to look at stuff like that. I got to go, okay, Miguel's heard us for 5 years. Tyree's heard for 5 years. Darren, sometimes they handle things, but I got to change it, which I'm okay with that. I will consult other people who've gone through it. There's no question, and just see their thoughts.
That's so wise. I thought about that as well. It's like, it's one thing, everybody's coming back, or everybody but Troy's coming back. Well, that brings its own challenges too. I think Trey Young this year had a comment at some point, this is boring. We just went to the Eastern Conference Finals. Now just playing regular season games is boring. And so just, it's not a math exercise. No. Whoever has the most guys coming back wins.
I remember I was at a coaching clinic, and this was the last time we made a national championship, and there was an NBA coach talking, and he said how number of days they were together. And I kind of looked up, and I got my calendar out, and I looked, and I flipped, and I go, man, we were together for 157 straight days. So I would argue it's probably close to that this year, So when you're with people, we give them 1 day off a week, sometimes 2. I mean, you're with them a lot, okay? A lot, probably too much at times. And you have to manage that. I think you might see, even with North Carolina this year, they're in the Final Four. 2 weeks ago, everybody had them pinned to be dead, so it is a long year, and sometimes people are going to be so focused on let's get back Elite Eight. I'm sure I'll do like I did in the past. We'll ban the term Elite Eight. We're not going to say that word. We're not going to say national championship because it's a different year. Whatever, 22, 23, I think it will be. We'll focus on whoever we're scrimmaging and whenever the first practice is and all the stuff we got to deal with. But it's hard because guys have been to the promised land and they played the last game of the year, and they definitely want to play in that game. I jokingly told my wife yesterday, I probably should schedule Southern Indiana just to get a game up in Evansville. And she's like, that's a long trip, man. We just got back from that. So, but, some of those challenges we'll face head on.
I'll go. The long season and last thing, just kind of hit me at some point. In many ways, it was a 3-year season because you lose to Queens 3 years ago to have with a chance to get to the Elite Eight, and then the next year you're the 4th seed in the regional for the NCAA tournament. COVID cancels the season for everybody.
Yes.
The year after that, Troy and Miguel are forced to sit out. We miraculously go 9-7 with 6 or 7 guys in uniform, 8 guys, whatever it was in uniform, and then this year they finally get a chance to get out there again and play a complete season, and it was the best one that I've been able to experience.
Yeah, that's close. A good point. It was a 3-year run. I remember we were up there, we were looking around. I think me and you were discussing, our coach Brian, 4 of the teams didn't have seasons last year. Chico, I know, didn't have a season. Just talking to their coach, when he said they only saw us guys 5 times.
Yes.
We're in the South where things are a little more wide open than it is in California. But I don't think Bentley played. IUP only played 4 games. So it's the same thing. When you get to that stage, there's a lot of stories getting to that stage. And I remember a college coach saying this: "There's a target on your back next year." Well, go. It'll be there. We're okay with that. And we know there's going to be a target on our back. We got all these guys back. We got some good players back. And we know when we go in the gyms, I'm sure we're going to lose one early where people are jumping up and storming the court and all that good stuff. But I'd rather have that problem than apathy, I can tell you that. So we look forward to it, and it'll be a big challenge here coming up.
Congratulations on a magical run. I can't wait to get started again on the 2022-2023 season. But in the meantime,
and I do want to thank you, Chad, because there's an amazing number of parents that reach out to me. Darren's mom reached out to me, congratulations, you guys. Hey, thanks, I'm on a meeting with you. Oh, I love Chad. So you've gone up down the East Coast and all the way to Puerto Rico. I guess if you got to learn Spanish, you could really do something down there. So, but no, I appreciate you guys, what you did, and all the media. The Bell Ringer, having people go on the trip, phenomenal. They did a great job. I mean, that from their perspective. A lot of people reached out. There was a lot of things going on in Augusta. I had no idea until I came back. Signs I'm seeing. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that was all going on. So that's all a testament to what we were able to put out in the product, but more importantly, the publicity we got. And, obviously we're running into Masters, which is an odd time of year, but one of the sports guys said, hey, I want to sit down and talk with you. I'm like, well, you're kind of busy next week. He's like, no, I need to do sooner than I get it. So I respect that. And like I said, look forward to a great year next year.
I think the Masters golf tournament is the only thing that could get people's mind off of this right now. It takes something of that magnitude to eventually get us to stop talking about Augusta University basketball. That's all we've been doing for weeks now, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.